Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua and I'm going to be your presenter today. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. It is, well, on my computer it's a little bit before 2, but it's 2 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. We're here to talk about the adjust asset transaction in Church Windows accounting today. But before we get started on that topic, just a couple things. We're going to be here till 2:20 today Eastern Time, probably less. This isn't a terribly difficult or challenging topic. It may not go the full 20 minutes. If you've never attended a webinar event before, please you can use the little red arrow on the side of your webinar control panel to minimize the control panel. Get it out of your way. This is particularly useful if you have just a single monitor setup, or if you've got a dual monitor, just go ahead and drag that control panel off to your second desktop just to get it out of the way, get the full visual effect of our webinar presentation. If you have questions for me, please type those in the questions portion of the webinar control panel there. I'll do my best to keep an eye on those, but I just like to remind folks, we've got a set finite time limit here for this topic. I want to make sure we cover it. I may be able to keep an eye on questions and answer them during the event. If not, I'll definitely be able to get to them at the end of it. If you can stick around, if it does go long, I'll do my best to get those questions answered for you. Please keep the questions topical, meaning I'm here to talk about, the adjust asset function. I know the rest of the software very well, but I'm not, necessarily equipped in my thinking or my data or what have you to answer other questions. That's why we have Church Windows technical support. If you have questions, about the software that aren't answered by the webinar or on a different topic, please call Church Windows Technical Support. Our technicians are always available and happy to help. Finally, our topic is taken today from our workbook A203, pages 2 and 3. Again, that's A203, pages 2 and 3. If you have the workbooks, you can follow along. That's what I'm using as the basis or guide for the webinar event today. If you're interested in purchasing the Church Windows workbooks, you can go to www.churchwindows.com, click right here under Beginning, and right down here in the menu you should be able to see the option called Training Workbooks. You can purchase the PDF file right online right there and print them out, or you can purchase them and we can print them and send them off to you, but they're more expensive, of course. Either way. But that's, again, what we're using. We're trying to use as many of the webinars or the workbooks as our basis for our webinars as we possibly can. Okay? All right. Let's go ahead and exit out of our browser and let's jump back into Church Windows. Okay. So the adjust asset transaction is a specific transaction that if we click under transactions at the top left, let me get my highlighter out here, transactions right up here, and then we go across the top center to the option called Other right here, that when we click on Other, it brings up a menu with several options. We notice that the second one in the list is called Adjust Asset, parentheses, Deposit Corrections, NSFs, Stock Valuations, etc. So, as the workbook points out there at the top of page 2, this is particularly handy for, kind of troublesome transactions frequently that we simply are unsure how to handle many times. A bank charges the wrong amount on a check, so we need to make an adjustment for an incorrect check amount that cleared the bank for a different amount. The bank charges a fee for a check that is returned due to NSF status or insufficient funds. Stock value or evaluations or changes in value on, say, our investment or our stock accounts, an outstanding check that needs to be voided. So what this all boils down to is that under our other menu, the adjust asset transaction is labeled in the database or in the software in accounting under the transaction type as a journal entry. Okay, so when we post the transaction, it shows up as journal or journal entry. And so it is essentially a journal entry transaction. Okay, so when we click on the Adjust Asset option, it opens up our Adjust Asset account screen. So what makes this transaction differ from other journal entry transactions is and this is very important, I use the adjust asset transaction all the time on my support calls with folks because it requires that one of the accounts involved in the transaction be an asset. So it's going to affect the top side of your balance sheet. Okay? Then at the bottom, you have to choose down here under accounts, down here at the bottom, right here under accounts, you have to choose another account that's going to be affected, that's going to affect the bottom side of our balance sheet. So essentially, we're either adding money into our balance sheet or we're taking money away. Okay? The other journal entry, the regular journal entry transaction, I can choose any account I want, including anything other than an asset. Okay? So this is what makes this transaction very unique is, well, frankly, what it does, folks, is it minimizes mistakes. So if you know that you need to affect a cash account for one reason or another, it requires that one of the accounts be one of your assets or cash accounts. So that's why I'm in favor of it. I think it minimizes mistakes where our assets and balance sheet accounts need to be affected. Okay? So it also shows up as increase or decrease as opposed to debits or credits. Okay? Well, when we're decreasing the asset, of course, it's going to show up in our transactions as a credit. When we're increasing the asset, it's a debit. So the system, because we're choosing either the increase or the decrease, it automatically knows what to choose or to do with those accounts in terms of debits and credits. Again, another advantage of the adjust asset transaction type. Okay. So, and let's say, and we're going to go through a couple scenarios here. It allows me to choose any asset. It could even allow me to choose a receivable if I have a receivable client I need to adjust. But as we scroll down, we begin to see our true cash accounts, our checking account or petty cash or money market or savings, CDs, any of them that start with a 100 if you're using account numbers. Okay? So let's say, for example, we're making a deposit correction that was made into our Huntington Bank checking. So we would choose the account, the bank cleared the check for a different amount than written, and it was a 50-cent difference on it, so it cleared the bank for 50 cents less. So, of course, if we're decreasing the asset, we're going to choose decrease. Okay? And then we would put in the amount that we're wanting to decrease our Huntington Bank checking by. Then we would enter the date of the transaction. We're going to backdate this into September, say. I would enter comments of some kind, bank, credited check, or credited check short by this amount. And then I would have to come down and I have to choose another account to also decrease. So in this case, because it was, say, maybe an income from donations, I want to reduce my, say, general tithes and offerings income. Here's my general tithes and offerings income, 400 account, by that same 50 cents. I don't want to overstate my income. Okay, so I want to properly adjust that. It is only 50 cents, but if we're paying attention to our details, and we all know that that's what is important about accounting is the details, we are now reducing our tithes and offerings by 50 cents as well, and we would simply click post. Okay? Will give us the option to print as well. Okay? So another example of a useful, an effective use of the adjust asset transaction is we've received a donation check from a member visitor whose check was insufficient. So we've made the adjustment or reversed the transaction due to NSF status in donations. We now need to come over into accounting and record that because the bank doesn't even know at the time that the check is deposited that it's insufficient. So the original deposit shows up, and then generally the bank shows an adjustment later that when the check was, when it was determined that the check was insufficient, and they show an adjustment on your statement that takes then those monies out. So the adjust asset transaction allows us to reduce the income account, just like we did with our original 50-cent deposit adjustment, but it also at the same time allows us to, say, record an NSF check fee that we were charged. So let's say, again, using our Huntington Bank checking as an example, again, we're going to decrease it. So again, decrease in the case of an asset is a credit. So it's going to then debit on our bottom accounts down here. So we're going to say it was a $65 check, and we're going to again enter the date occurred that it happened. I'm going to record this on the date that the bank statement shows this transaction or this money being taken out of our account. So we'll leave it as today's date, and then we would put in comments of some kind again, NSF check number 1234 from Jim Jones. If I could type today with fee, bank fee. Okay, so down here this is going to be a two-line asset transaction. So let's say that Jim's gift went into our building fund contributions. So we would record our $65 reduction in that. Again, a debit to the income account reduces it. We would click our plus sign on the right, and then above that we'll choose our bank fees expense. A debit increases that, and we would put in whatever the bank fee was, again totaling $80, and similarly we would post. Okay. Oh, I didn't enter the right amount at the top, folks. I'm so sorry. That was my fault. But you see, the system did tell me that it was incorrect. It wouldn't let me post it until the debits and the credits at the top matched. So now that I've got 80 and 80, now it'll let me post. Okay? All right. And finally, another, again, a use of the adjust asset transaction is when, say, we've received a statement from our investment company. We've got some stock asset accounts that we want to record some adjustments or changes or change in value to. So we're going to choose our, let's see, do I have the, yeah, so we're going to choose our Lynn Schwab investment account, and it's been a good year thus far, so we're going to record it as an increase of the account. So increase it, and again, I would probably record it as of the date of my statement date, whenever that may be, so we can backdate this again to maybe the end of the third quarter. So we can say third quarter gains. And here we can choose our income expense or income account on gains, losses on investment. Same thing. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, folks, is you don't have to record it to an income account. Okay? I could also scroll up and I could choose the fund balance account itself. So if you've got an investment fund, you could also credit the 300 account. If your church doesn't want it to show up on, say, the treasurer's report as income, you could just do a credit to the fund or a debit to the fund and a debit or credit to the corresponding asset. Okay? It all depends on what you want to see on your report. Okay? So we're going to leave it as our gains, losses on investments. We're going to re-enter the amount again. What was it? 875.55. And click on post. Okay? And it then gives us again our prompt to print. So just to finalize this here, we've got a few more minutes left. I don't want to rush on it, but if we go back into browse transactions and I put in, say, date posted of today, click OK. Here are my three transactions. The one thing I want to point out is, as stated before, right here under our type column, it shows up with JRNL or journal entry. Okay? Again, it minimizes mistakes when we need to make transactions or adjustments to our asset accounts. Okay? It still doesn't mean that I could choose an income account by mistake when I should have maybe chosen a fund. Okay? But I can always fix that. I can always go back in later and fix it. It doesn't mean I couldn't always choose the wrong account on the other side, but at least I know at that point I'm choosing and adjusting, my balance sheet by increasing or decreasing it or the proper asset by that amount. Okay? Look at this as an effective alternate transaction to a journal entry where we can literally choose to debit and credit any account we want in our chart of accounts. Okay? It's, again, a wonderful alternative to that. I use this when dealing the adjust asset transaction with dealing with writing off or voiding stale dated checks. In the current month, I'll use the adjust asset, again, increasing it to offset the old check that never cleared. I can clear them both. They're gone. It's all dealt with, and everything's good. Okay, so let me see what I got for questions here, folks. We got about 5 minutes left here. As I said, it was probably going to wrap up fairly quickly. Repeat that again about adjusting an investment account to decrease, not showing in the treasurer's report. Okay, so yeah, great question. So if we go back into our adjust asset, again, I would choose my, respective investment account. So my Lynn Schwab investment, so increasing or decrease, I would enter my amount of that. I would enter the date. But down here, if I, under my account at the bottom, so in this case a decrease would be a credit to whatever account, or sorry, a debit to that account, correct. It would be, it will allow me to choose my 4s and my 5s, or my income and my expense accounts, which are my treasurer's report accounts. But you don't have to. It doesn't have to be an income or expense. So if you don't want these changes in these investments to actually reflect on the treasurer's report as part of the church's profit and loss each year, you can come in here and choose a fund. Notice we've got our 300 accounts here. Our memorial funds and our mission fund and education and building and general fund. So you can post these. Again, journal entry essentially would allow us to post to any transaction. So you don't have to post to a 4 or 5. You can post to the 3 as well. I hope that helps. Would you still need to adjust the fund balance in the separate transaction for the Schwab example? Barbara, no, because of the fact that I was assuming that if the income or expense account that I had chosen was linked to the fund, that linking to the fund will automatically adjust the fund it's linked to by rote of that linked relationship. So no, provided the income or expense is linked to the proper fund. If I want to adjust tithes account, should it be adjusted in the donations module and then be passed to the general ledger? Well, Linda, that depends on, if we're talking about in this particular case like an NSF check, I wouldn't be again, I would make my adjustment or reversal in donations or correction, and I wouldn't transfer it over because, again, I have a different need in accounting, okay? But in the case of something where if I needed to go in and make an adjustment that affected donations that ultimately would affect accounting, I probably would transfer it over. But you kind of have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. It's such a difficult question to answer. There's no one single kind of cookie-cutter answer for that. We kind of have to deal with it based on the circumstances, where we are we reconciled, what accounts are involved, things like that. So if it ever occurs that you're unsure, folks, please call our technicians. We're certainly happy to kind of talk it through and rationalize it through with you to kind of get, to see if we can't get those questions answered to lead you to the right conclusion. Great questions. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. I know that sometimes they can be kind of lengthy to type in, but I don't want to cut things off prematurely. Well, thank you so much for attending, folks. We hope it's been helpful. The video of this webinar will be out on our website. I think there's probably already one there on the adjust asset transaction. If not, this one will be out there sometime in the next few days or so. You can revisit it at any time. And again, if you're interested in the workbook, certainly they can be helpful. I encourage you to look at those. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar for everyone since I haven't seen any other questions coming in. And we hope to see you everyone at a future Church Windows webinar event. All right. Thank you, folks. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.